Welcome to the Connected Health Podcast. I'm excited to announce that the Connected Health Podcast is officially 1 year old. I started dreaming about this podcast last May, and I really enjoy listening to podcasts myself, so I wondered what it would be like to make one. There's a lot of information out there, and people need that information broken up into smaller bits so it's more easily consumed. And my goal with the podcast was to come up with individual topics to talk for a few minutes about it. And I underestimated my ability to just yap. Maybe I talk too much about a certain topic, or maybe some episodes are technically longer than they should be, but I'm okay with that. I wanted to talk about some of the episode highlights of episodes that I really loved and enjoyed. And I wanted to start out with the first 4 episodes. I intended that to be a series on meeting your hormones, becoming acquainted with them, with all the talk on the internet these days about hormone imbalances. That series breaks down what the important hormones are at play that are tied to a lot of people's health-related symptoms, what to look out for, and how to start rebalancing the body as a whole. The series right after that was about habit formation, how to break a habit, how to start new habits, and what's going on within the brain to help reinforce good brain patterns and break bad ones. I really loved my first guest episode. That was with Dr. Tony Crone. He is a chiropractor and works in men's functional medicine. Go ahead and check that out. It's episode 18, called Beyond Testosterone, Real Talk About Men's Wellness. Men's wellness is typically centered around the topic of testosterone, but there's so much more there, and Dr. Tony breaks all that down in that episode. I had 2 interviews with acupuncturist and traditional Chinese medicine practitioners. One is with my Aunt Amy, and then one is with Skylar, working out of Shen Medicine in Nashville, Tennessee. And while both episodes were generally about the same topic, each episode covered different aspects of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So Skylar's episode is episode number 26, and then the one with Amy Rieselman is episode 37. I also really loved episode 30 with Dr. Thomas Kuchenbrod. We talked about gut health, his incredible journey of bouncing back and healing from IBS, IBD, and Crohn's disease, and the fact that it is possible. I sent out a message to my email list announcing the 1-year anniversary of the podcast, and I also was taking questions from both Instagram and my email subscribers. If you wanted to be on that list, go ahead and head to my website, connectedhabits.com, and you can scroll to the bottom where you can sign up for the newsletter. I promise I do not blow up your inbox, and I personally could do better about getting more frequent newsletters out there, but you can expect something in your inbox at least once a month, at most 3 times a month. And my Instagram is Cannabis Coaching. You can find me on there posting relevant health information, a lot of content with my dog, and the fun health-related things that I'm trying. Let's get into our questions that were sent in by the audience. I opened up the floor to ask me questions that are health-related, related to the topics of my podcast and what I do as an integrative health practitioner. Question number 1 is, what can I do to make sure I get quality sleep? I'm always waking up throughout the night. Okay, this is a topic that is brought up amongst most of my clients, and my clients range anywhere from mid-40s to mid-70s. And the most common complaint I hear about is the fact that sleep is tough. There's many reasons for sleep disruption, and I did actually do an episode all about sleep. Episode 13 is called Fix Your Sleep, Rest Rituals, Circadian Rhythm, and Recovery Hacks. So check that episode out if you're really looking on what to do to fix your sleep. Like I said, there's many different reasons why sleep could be disrupted, and I wanted to take you through some of those reasons. One of the reasons is that you could have a disrupted cortisol schedule. So cortisol and melatonin, they are 2 hormones that work in opposition to each other in a healthy body. So a normal healthy person will have high cortisol in the morning, and it'll start to lower throughout the day to get you calm for sleep. Melatonin is the opposite. Melatonin is one of our sleep-inducing hormones, and it has other benefits as well. But typically, melatonin is low in the morning and rises throughout the day, and at night it's at its peak so that you can have a nice, restful sleep. If you are not eating well, if you don't have a consistent sleep schedule, if you're living in a high-stress world, or you might be a shift worker, but there are reasons why your sleeping schedules and your waking schedules are not normal, so your hormones are going to be in different spots. So that's one of the first things that I would address. Are you going to bed and are you waking up at around the same time every morning? A lot of people like to scroll on their phones, and before you know it, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you have to get up at 6 a.m. That can be one way that cortisol and melatonin levels are disrupted. And in modern times, it is pretty common to be found scrolling in the middle of the night. And I want you to evaluate yourself on whether or not you do that. If that is a habit that you have, it's recommended to take steps to mitigate that. And I give you practical steps and applications in that episode 13 of the Connected Health Podcast, all about sleep. There is also something in our body called our circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is typically, historically, throughout time, all of our ancient ancestors would rise with the sunrise and go to sleep with the sunset. So typically that's just our body's cycle. Everything in our body runs as a cycle. There are messages sent from our brain to the rest of our body to do things on a cycle. But if we don't put ourselves into a routine, those signals can get a little bit messed up and they don't know when to fire or at what times to do their jobs. So the best thing you can do if you're struggling with sleep is to put yourself in a predictable, consistent routine. Go to bed at around the same time, wake up at the same time. Yes, even on the weekends. Now, what I will do personally is I will just let myself sleep in maybe 30 minutes to an hour on weekends, especially if I don't have work going on in the early mornings. I still like to keep my wake and sleep routine pretty consistent. Otherwise, I find myself struggling to get out of bed when Monday comes again. Another reason people wake up throughout the night is they're eating too close to bedtime. So that could be either eating your largest meal, which is typically dinner for most people. Another common habit I'll see is that you're snacking while you're watching TV at night on a bag of potato chips or some ice cream. You're just mindlessly snacking as you're watching your favorite episode of your favorite TV show, and you end up eating a little bit more than you were planning on because you're not focused on how much you're eating, you're focused on the screen. So that's another thing I would be mindful of. Are you eating too close to bedtime? When you're eating too close to bedtime, your body's working on the process of digestion, and sometimes that can be disruptive of sleep. So I would recommend stopping eating and possibly even drinking fluids 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. Another common reason people wake up at a random time in the middle of the night is the cortisol awakening response. So cortisol, again, is our stress hormone, but it's also our get up and go hormone. And there's a part of the circadian rhythm where cortisol starts to rise typically around 4 o'clock in the morning. It starts to rise at that time to help you get out of bed at around 6 or 7 in the morning. And sometimes with that release, it actually startles our body and wakes us up because it preemptively thinks it's time to get ready for the day. So that can be one of the reasons why you're waking up at maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Those are several reasons why you might be waking up in the middle of the night. I've also had several conversations with clients recently about getting some sleep studies. Now, you might not be aware of whether or not you're snoring or if your breathing stops in the middle of the night, but one of the ways that you can get that investigated is by doing a sleep study with a sleep clinic. They'll hook you up to some monitors throughout the night and monitor you as you sleep. You'll get a score and a report, and a doctor will go over that with you and evaluate further recommendations for your sleep treatment. But sometimes in the positions that we sleep in, or if we sleep with our mouth open, that's actually not the most optimal way to get air into our lungs and into our airways. And so sometimes in the middle of like a dead sleep, people will stop breathing for a few seconds, and then they'll and then they'll keep that cycle going on over and over again. And that cycle can wake you up at random times in the night. So if you are over the age of, I would say, even like people as young as 40 are struggling with sleep apnea, I would consider, aside from making the other changes first, possibly getting a sleep study. I'll make some supplement recommendations as well. I would be cautious with a melatonin supplement, just because if you overconsume melatonin supplements, your body's not able to produce it on its own. But if you stick with a low dose, anywhere from 1 to 3 milligrams about an hour before bed, that can help you get ready to wind down and fall asleep. Something that is more broad and I recommend across the board is magnesium glycinate. In a high stress modern society, we're all pretty depleted in our minerals, magnesium being one of them. So I recommend 300 to 500 milligrams of magnesium glycinate every day. You can take a dose of 100 in the morning and a dose of 200 before you go to bed, or you can take it all at bedtime if that's easier for you. And there are some other ones, but I would rather have a consult with you to make sure if it's the best fit. I'm glad I spent a lot of time on that because so many of us are having sleeping problems. And trust me, I get it. When I don't get enough sleep, I am cranky. Okay, next question is, I've been strength training 3 to 4 times a week, but the scale isn't moving. Is my metabolism the problem? Okay, great question. This is also multifaceted because strength training is one facet of lifestyle changes that you can make when you want to lose weight. Another one that will help you move the needle is your nutrition. Are you eating enough, and are you eating the most optimal foods for your weight loss journey? Another component is sleep. So I'll leave it at that, and then we're gonna go through those 3. So number 1, workouts, strength training. I love that. I highly recommend that. Please continue doing that. Number 2, nutrition. If you're trying to get the scale to move, but your nutrition is not dialed in, we're gonna have some issues. Now, if you're brand new to strength training, you could actually see some weight added to the scale at the very beginning because your muscle is just adapting and it's growing, and it'll start to drop later on. But from the nutrition aspect, are you eating enough protein? So number 1 thing to do when you're strength training is to eat enough protein. That's gonna be your meats, your less processed dairy. If you're plant-based, there's plant-based options like tofu and pea protein and hemp. These are all things that you can add to your diet every single meal. I recommend 30 grams of protein per meal at the bare minimum. So examples of 30 grams of protein for breakfast, you can do a scoop of protein powder, half a cup of Greek yogurt, milk, and some frozen fruits as a smoothie. You can do a full cup of egg whites mixed in with a couple of yolks. You can add in some ground beef, ground turkey, turkey bacon. And that'll probably bring you upwards of 40 grams right there, which is awesome. For lunchtime, I love any type of meat, beef, turkey, chicken. You can even do like a split pea soup. Peas have a lot of protein as well. And then same thing for dinner. Meats and fish, vegetables are a great priority. And when it comes to carbohydrates, we really want to avoid anything deep fried, and we want to avoid anything that has a lot of sugar. So I tell people to build their plate with half the plate full of any type of fruits and vegetables. I tell people to eat the rainbow. A quarter of your plate should be a serving of protein. So that can be 3 to 4 ounces of steak, 3 to 4 ounces of chicken, beef, whatever you want to add to it. And then the other quarter of the plate should be carbohydrates. Think rice, quinoa, potatoes, even pasta if that's your thing. But that should be your plate structure. And then number 3 is your sleep and recovery. If you're not getting enough sleep and you're not getting enough rest, your body's not going to recover well, and your body's going to actually be inflamed because it's not recovering as well. And where there's inflammation, there's also water retention, and water retention can also show up on the scale as extra weight. So those are 3 things that I would pay attention to if you're strength training regularly but not starting to see results. Next question, how do I know if I have gut issues? I don't have stomach pain, but sometimes I have bloating and brain fog, and it's random. Oh, great question. You can have gut problems without pain. Gut problem symptoms can range anywhere from rashes on the skin, acne, any type of dermatitis can be gut related, interestingly enough. Bloating is a symptom as well. Brain fog can be a symptom as well. Stomach pain, stomach distension, constipation, diarrhea, excessive belching, burping, acid reflux, even bad breath. All of these things are signs of gut problems. The gut is tied to everything because your immune system sits in your gut, and your gut is supposed to be healthy and robust so that you can absorb and digest what you're eating. You can eat as much as you want, but if your gut is damaged, you're not absorbing what you need to be absorbing. If you do have random symptoms, including bloating and brain fog, that's a symbol that there could be something that you should investigate when it comes to your gut. In the natural health and functional health space, we recommend stool testing or possibly urine testing. If you're having more symptoms like the ones that I listed on top of the bloating and the brain fog, I would recommend some sort of stool test because it'll take a sample of your stool, and some of the tests will take samples through several days, so it's a bigger picture of what's going on in the gut, because some things that show up one day in your stool will not show up the next day. Very interestingly enough, there are pathogens in our digestive system that sometimes like to burrow in our digestive wall, and they don't like to show their faces. And sometimes they avoid testing if you just do a simple sample. You'll send your stool into a lab, and the stool will be evaluated for things like different pathogens, bacteria, parasitic activity, fungal overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, hidden infections. It'll tell you the likelihood of your gut lining being compromised, and so much more. If the gut testing is outside of your financial means, you can work with a practitioner to nail down exactly what your symptoms are and change parts of your lifestyle and your diet, what you're putting into your body, to help you lessen those symptoms and start to rebalance the gut. If you have gut problems, I do not recommend just taking a random probiotic that you see an influencer selling online, because that strain and that probiotic might not be what would be beneficial for you. Next question. I'm fine eating healthy during the week, but in the weekends, I end up being out of routine. What should I do? This is a problem that I see a lot as well. During the weekday routine, you might be working a 9 to 5 or a Monday to Friday, very consistent thing. And it's easy to be in a routine then because everything else is also in a routine. You arrive at work at the same time, you leave work at the same time, that's completely fine. Your lunch break is at the same time, that's completely fine. But when it's the weekend, when there's less structure, people tend to fall off the wagon, so it seems. And what I would say to that type of person, because it is more common than we think, is to give yourself structure even on the weekends. It doesn't have to be as strict as it is Monday to Friday, but like we talked about earlier with your rhythms of going to bed and waking up at the same time, how about we have your meals at the same time? If you have lunch at around the same time as you do during the week, then your brain and your body will adapt. Okay, it's lunchtime. I have to stick to my nutrition plan. I have to fill up my plate with the vegetables 50%, the protein 25%, and the carbs 25%. That is the structure within yourself. Any other way that you can add routine and structure to your weekends to help support your goals is something you can do as well. People thrive off of routine and people thrive off of structure. But when the weekends are yours and you have a little bit more flexibility, know yourself well enough to put some boundaries in place, to put some structure in place so that you can be most successful. Weekends don't have to be a free-for-all. It doesn't have to be throw everything to the wind and do whatever you want. Put in facets of structure for yourself that will help you personally be most successful, and you'll be able to continue on that good trajectory even on the weekends. Oh, here's a good question. I've been on birth control for years and I'm thinking about coming off. What should I do before I stop taking it? Okay, first of all, work with your doctor, specifically gynecologist. Have a conversation. Just be like, hey, I'm thinking about getting off this birth control. Can you help me? There's 2 books that I recommend about this topic: Period Repair Manual by Dr. Lara Bryden and Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton. They talk about how to safely get off the pill and how to bring up the topic to your doctor, the language to use, the questions to use, and they will help guide you on the process. And the doctor will help you on a plan to either taper off or have your birth control removed or XYZ, depending on what type of birth control that you're on. And then the books will have the nutrition, the information, the very simple step-by-step guides on how to rebalance your body. If that portion of it, the stuff that you do on your own, seems a little bit too difficult, work with a health coach, an integrative health practitioner, a functional medicine doctor, because they'll be able to help support you with maybe the herbs or the supplements that you should be taking or the lifestyle changes that you should be able to make. Your doctor can help taper off a pill or get something removed, but they're typically not the type of provider that will follow you through your journey and check up on you and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're going to have to seek that support elsewhere if you don't feel comfortable doing it on your own. Okay, next question. What is one wellness trend that you hate? Okay. That's a hard one. What is one wellness trend that I hate? I don't love cold plunges, especially for women. They're not good for the nervous system. They're not good if you're highly stressed and burned out. They can be fun. Like, think about it. You're in a hot sauna and then you jump in a cold pool for a few seconds. There's some novelty to that. It feels kind of good. It feels kind of refreshing. But I don't think that people need to make a whole routine out of it. One more question. I want to be healthy and do healthy things, but I feel like I don't have enough time to fit it in. What should I do? And that's a really good question. I mean, I get it. We are all packing our calendars as much as possible. We're chasing productivity. We're chasing trying to fill as much as we can into a short amount of time. I completely get that. I'm completely guilty of that. However, you only get one life, you only get one body, so it is up to you to take care of it, to maintain it, because if you don't, it will come back to bite you in the future. So that is one consideration to make. What are some sacrifices that you can make today in order to make tomorrow better for you? I talk about the pillars and the foundations of health a lot on my podcast: sleep, exercise, nutrition, targeted supplementation, rest and recovery, emotional balance, and stress management. All of these things are facets of our health. And while I mentioned 7 or 8 topics, you can kind of combine some into one singular topic. I would at least, at the bare minimum, as a starting point, figure out a nutrition plan, figure out a movement plan, and figure out a sleep plan. There are so many things that you can do through all the categories that I mentioned, but the top 3 that are going to move the needle the most are sleep / recovery / rest, nutrition, and movement. Now take those 3, and I want you to take a chunk of time, put it on your calendar, where you're going to evaluate your entire schedule. I've had to do this when things get a little bit too much on my plate. I'll put everything on my Google Calendar with different colors and see where there are blank spaces. And I'll see where the spaces are full. And then I'll look at that and see, what can I cut out? What can I condense? What can I simplify? What can I reschedule? What can I put off until later? What is not immediate? What is not even my responsibility? Ask yourself all of these questions, and you might have to come up with things that you are going to have to cut off, and that includes conversations with people that don't seem pleasant to have. But to protect your health, to protect your future, you might want to consider it. And then after that activity, you'll have a little bit more blank space in your schedule, and you'll be able to put in nutrition, sleep, and movement. You don't have to do much to move the needle in either of these areas. Nutrition can be something like ordering a meal prep service, or taking 90 minutes per week to prep your meals for the entire week. Or for exercise, waking up 30 minutes earlier so you can take your dog for a 30-minute walk in the morning to get your steps in. Or for sleep, maybe it is cutting out your evening episode binge and going to bed an hour early. All of these things, while not fun to do or to cut out, will help you move the needle. Would you rather exchange something more beneficial in the long term than short-term gratification? You have to start weighing these decisions. Is it more important to you to watch 3 episodes in a row of your favorite Netflix show? Or is it more important to you to get a good night's sleep so that you're not chugging 3 coffees the next day, you're not falling asleep in your 2 o'clock meeting, and you're not feeling too tired by the end of the day to read a story to your child? Think about that. Is it worth it to you? Are the harder things worth it to you? And then another tip I'll give on top of that is, we all deal with decision fatigue. So if you hem and haw about going to the gym after work, move it to the morning, because the earlier that you do something hard at the beginning of the day, the easier it will be for you to follow through on it. If your brain is tired of making decisions and managing your willpower, towards the end of the day, you'll start to lose because your brain doesn't want to work that hard anymore. So do it earlier, do it sooner, and schedule it, and you'll be so much better off. Thank you for listening to 1 whole year of the Connected Health Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. If you struggled with anything, I recommend listening to past episodes or sending me an email or a note if you have future recommendations or requests for episode topics. I'd love to hear that. You can email me at vanessa@connectedhabits.com or find me on Instagram or Facebook, Connected Habits Coaching. Please share the episodes that you find helpful, because sharing health is the same as sharing wealth. The healthier we are, the wealthier we are, because the biggest asset that we have as humans is our health. I hope you have a great day.